Hi, I'm Jay McClellan with Fortune Bay Expedition Team, and this is the first episode from our Hidden Waterfalls of Northern Ontario expedition, where we explored some remote waterfalls that are little known and seldom visited because they're challenging to reach or just not well documented. Our 2-week trip from Michigan through northern Ontario covered 3,300 kilometers, much of it on logging roads and primitive trails, especially at the northern reaches of the expedition. From Michigan, we crossed into Ontario at Sault Ste. Marie, then drove up to the Aubinadong River area, where 2 of our explorers would be floating the river in a canoe. Our first job was to find a campsite big enough for a group of our 4 vehicles, and as luck would have it, we found on right at a little-known waterfall on the Aubinadong River. The trail leading into the campsite had some deep puddles from the recent rain, and the first one was a bit deep for some of our group's vehicles, so I decided to drain it a bit before we proceeded to the campsite. This spot is known locally as King Chutes, and it's not one you'll find on most maps. That night, Liz and I climbed down to the river, and I took this photo of the chutes illuminated by a full moon. We spent the next few days exploring the surrounding area before we started the actual Waterfalls expedition. I put chapter markers on the video, so if you just want to see more waterfalls, you can jump ahead to the Twin Falls chapter. With me in the 4-wheel drive Sprinter van and Tom following in the 2-wheel drive Sprinter, we'll push down a narrow road to Mashagama Lake. We reached the lake and it was spectacular, but unfortunately it just didn't have enough room for all of our vehicles to camp there, or even enough for a Sprinter van to turn around at the end. So we backed out of this spot, having not scored a campsite, but having gained experience in navigating some very narrow trails in our vans. After returning from Mashagama Lake, we settled into a much larger campsite at the boat launch on Mashagama Lake. This spot had plenty of room for all our vehicles and offered some great paddling with our kayaks and paddleboard. As Liz and I were paddling around the north bay of the lake, we spotted this black bear on the far shore. We got the GoPro turned on just in time to capture a short clip of the bear, but unfortunately it didn't stick around long enough for a closer shot. This turned out to be a great spot to camp, and we really enjoyed this beautiful lake. Our first hidden waterfall destination was Four Bay Falls, and even getting close to it required a long drive on some primitive roads that were a bit sketchy in spots. Eventually we reached a spot where we could go no farther because there was a beaver pond here and the culverts under the road had been removed so that our vehicles really couldn't make this water crossing. We weren't too far from Four Bay Falls, so we decided to camp here for the night and to try to reach them in the morning. We found some old moose tracks here, but sadly we didn't see any actual moose. This was a beautiful spot to camp, and we enjoyed relaxing by the beaver pond in the evening. The next morning we set out on our trek to try to reach Four Bay Falls, and the first task was to get through this water, which wasn't real deep. It was about knee deep, but we'd also spotted quite a few leeches in it, so we kept on moving through the water and didn't stick around long enough for them to find our legs. The first part of our hike followed really what was left of the road. Obviously hadn't been traveled by a lot of vehicles lately because the culverts are out, but it was fairly easy walking in this stretch because the road was still kind of there. And so we enjoyed just traveling through the woods and weren't really into bushwhacking yet, just walking down the path, and it was a nice hike. We saw a lot more moose tracks along the way, and we also spotted some bear tracks. They weren't fresh, but bear are definitely in the area, so we kept an eye out for them. The trail got thicker as we moved along, so we started having to push through a bit more alders and brush, but still wasn't too difficult yet. Eventually the trail ran out, so we just bushwhacked our way on through the woods, navigating with map and compass to get to the location where the falls are supposed to be. And it wasn't super tough going, but we did have some spots where we needed a little help getting through. At last we reached the river, and there isn't a whole lot of flow here. It's kind of a pretty spot, but there's obviously no waterfall, even though we're right where the map says it should be. So I sent the drone up to take a look both upriver and downriver to see if we were just close, but not close enough. After we got home, we figured out the problem was that our guidebook that we were using had the waterfall in the wrong place on the map. So the actual waterfall was in fact over 1 kilometer from where we were, and I didn't fly the drone that far to be able to see it. Nevertheless, we got some good drone shots of the river and the river valley, and it certainly is pretty country out here. Well, here we are, the Fortune Bay Expedition Team, Hidden Waterfalls of Northern Ontario Expedition. And as luck would have it, our very first waterfall is completely hidden, 100% hidden. We have just bushwhacked through what seemed about 40 kilometers of the thickest woods we can imagine. Probably wasn't really that much, but it was a heck of a bushwhack. And we are precisely where Four Bay Falls is supposed to be, and it appears to be hidden under the river because there ain't nothing here but river. So we're hoping for a little bit shorter bushwhack back, Jack. But having fun at any rate. It's been an adventure getting here. Be maybe hopefully a little bit less adventure getting back, and yep, we'll move on and find another one. So everybody having some form of fun?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
All fun.
All right, we go farther. After our long bushwhack to Four Bay Falls, which we didn't actually find, we were ready for something a bit easier, so we drove up to Twin Falls, and we could drive right up to this one. You can see the top of the falls from the small hydroelectric plant there, but most of them are hidden far below, and I flew the drone way down the hillside to get this amazing footage that I hope you enjoy. Well, we hope you enjoyed episode 1 of our Hidden Waterfalls of Northern Ontario expedition. And if you like this sort of thing, then give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, and we'll keep making more. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll keep going farther to explore some more remote areas and find some really cool waterfalls. Thanks for watching.